Alright, so on to Seneca, part 2 for Tuesday. I'm going to be referencing again Constellations of Philosophy by Augustine, as well as the excerpts in our text. And so I want to start with a Senecan premeditatio. So this is what followers of Seneca would recite every morning, just remind themselves of their place in the universe. Fortune gives us nothing which we can really own. Nothing, whether public or private, is stable. The destinies of men, no less than those of cities, are in a whirl. Whatever structure has been reared by a long sequence of years, at the cost of great toil and through the great kindness of the gods, is scattered and dispersed in a single day. No, he who has set a day has granted too long a postponement to swift misfortune. An hour, an instant of time, suffices for the overthrow of empires. How often have cities in Asia, how often in Achaia, been laid low by a single shock of earthquake? How many towns in Syria, how many in Macedonia have been swallowed up? How often has this kind of devastation laid Cyprus in ruins? We live in the middle of things which have all been destined to die. Mortal have you been born, to mortals have you given birth. Reckon on everything, expect everything. Who knows what's going to happen next? Not you, not me, nobody knows. So why worry about what's happening next? So Seneca is also speaking about anxiety here. And so Seneca is a Stoic philosopher. And Stoicism sometimes gets a bit of a bad rap for being non-emotional or removed or distant emotionally. Schrappe at least doesn't think that's what Seneca is talking about, nor most Stoics. Most Stoics are just talking about putting emotion in its proper place, not being overly emotional. It's not saying don't be emotional, it's saying emotion has its proper place, right? And he speaks about anxiety, Seneca does. So again, this is from Augustine talking about Seneca. He does such a wonderful job here, speaking of these philosophers. All right, this is quoting Seneca. Anxiety is a condition of agitation about an uncertain situation, which one both wishes will turn out for the best and fears may turn out for the worst. Typically leaves sufferers unable to derive enjoyment from supposedly pleasurable activities. Right? So if this anxiety is so great, you're so anxious about the future, you can't even enjoy it while it's happening. So if you go on a first date with someone and you're already anticipating this thing's not going to work out, or what if this thing doesn't work out, or what if it does work out for a while and then doesn't work out, your mind has already gone so far into the future that you can't even enjoy the experience of having that first date with that person right here and right now. Augustine does a nice job of visually depicting this as well. And really, this is all about frustration, right? You're frustrated because you have these certain expectations. You hope for the best and they're not met. Or you expect the worst and you're not disappointed because it actually is, right? But you have these unreasonable expectations of yourself, of others, of the world itself. And so it leads then to things like frustration. So he's got this illustration here. This is Augustin's illustration of what Seneca's talking about. This brick wall that you keep trying to get through. Guess what? You're not going to. And you become frustrated because you don't get through the wall. No kidding, you don't get through the wall. A collision of a wish with an unyielding reality. Reality, you have limited, at best, limited control over. But your level of frustration, your level of anxiety, you have complete control over. Your wishes, you have complete control over. So rather than continuing to ram into this brick wall, perhaps find another way around the brick wall, over the wall, around the wall. Then you're not frustrated. A single idea recurs throughout Seneca's work, that we best endure frustrations which we have prepared ourselves for and understand, and are hurt most by those we least expect and cannot fathom. That creed that I read at the beginning, 5 minutes ago now, right? Take things as they come. Don't have unreasonably high expectations, or unreasonably low expectations either. Maybe don't have tons of expectations. Just be pleasantly surprised. Perhaps that's the key to happiness. Lowered expectations. There's an aspect of that here with Seneca. This frustration then gets ramped up and leads to anger. The ultimate infantile collision. Right? Children get angry when they don't get their way because they were expecting their way to happen. So do adults. I was expecting to get that promotion. Now I'm frustrated and angry that I didn't. I was expecting to get this and I didn't, so now I'm frustrated and angry and blah, blah, blah. Maybe your expectations are too high. Maybe instead you should be pleasantly surprised if it happens. Whoa, wow. There's probably a connection then to some of the stuff Lucretius talked about too, right? This desiring things and all of that. And desiring leads to suffering, which is really Buddhism, but Lucretius is saying very similar things. In the Senecan view, what makes us angry are dangerously optimistic notions about what the world and other people are like. Think about when you're disappointed by the world, by humanity, by other people. When did they disappoint you the most? When you had the highest expectations for them. When you thought not only are they capable of better, they're capable of this much better. Optimism is good and healthy. Even Seneca would say that. But there's a level at which it becomes dangerous because it's overly optimistic. The sun's shining off of my forehead. Sorry. Okay. Dangerously optimistic. There's a danger in optimism. There's a danger in pessimism too. Against this balance, this level, reasonable optimism, reasonable pessimism. Let's turn to the excerpt. I'm going to move this a little bit. I see I'm keeping your optimism, your expectations nice and reasonable. Dr. Schrappe, obviously not very familiar with technology. These aren't going to be the best videos you've ever seen. There's going to be some problems and some complications. He's doing it outside, which then leads to all other sorts of potential issues, like the sun hitting his forehead in a certain way or shimmering off of his glasses. It's a little better. Okay. Seneca, and so this is page 768. And these intros by Cottingham are pretty good too. These little 2 or 3 paragraph intros are pretty good. And this is from a letter that he's writing to a friend. It's quite clear to you that no one can live a happy or even a tolerable life without the study of wisdom. So again, mental happiness is going to be greater than physical happiness. Mental pleasure greater than physical pleasure. But it's still about pleasure. It's still hedonism of a type. Further, only once wisdom is perfected do we achieve a happy life. But a tolerable life is possible even when we're setting out on the road. So happiness may not come until the end or closer to the end, but we can have a tolerable life up until that point. Think about, and I'm thinking stereotypically here, about old people. Usually fairly content, right? They've kind of lived their lives, they've done the struggle thing, and unless they're ill, in which case things are different, but if they're just old, they're kind of content. They've kind of achieved this level of, should we call it self-actualization or happiness, that the rest of us are striving for. With age comes wisdom, one of the sayings. This, oh yeah, this too shall pass. Yeah, today was a good day, not the greatest day of all time. Today was a bad day, but not the worst day of all time. There's not the highs and the lows that come with something like adolescence. Teenagers, right? Oh my goodness, this is the greatest day of all time. Oh my goodness, this is the worst thing that could ever possibly happen to me. 85-year-olds, it was a good day, it was a bad day. Every day is just kind of right around here. Teenagers, Seneca saying, let's get to that contentment, let's get to that happy, but we can at least be tolerable until then. We don't have to have frustrations. We don't have to have anxiety along the way. 769, he says, philosophy is not a device for popular consumption or public display. It consists of real achievement, not mere words. I agree with part of that and disagree with part of that. I agree that it consists in real achievement, but Schrappe thinks it is for popular consumption. Get out of the ivory tower, talk to everybody, so on and so forth. But that's neither here nor there. Philosophy then shapes and constructs the soul. It orders our life. It governs our actions. Notice here, remember, Ayn Rand talked about, look, the abstract ideas of philosophy would allow you to deal with the concrete realities of life. Seneca's saying the same thing, and Seneca, of course, predates Rand by quite some time. Seneca here, this is 64 A.D., and Rand's 1974. She's giving the commencement speech at West Point. I know you can't see the flowers because of my head. Okay. No, that's worse. Yeah, that's better. I stand like this a little. Okay. They're prettier than my face. Philosophy shapes, constructs the soul, orders our life, governs our actions, shows us what's to be done and what's to be avoided. It sits at the helm and directs our course as we drift amid the seas of doubt. Without it, without philosophy itself, no one can live with courage. Again, dying is easy, living is hard. If it's hard, it means it must be courageous to continue to live and to continue to pursue this happy, meaningful life. It takes courage. Paul Tillich talks about the courage to be. Without it, no one can live with courage and free from anxiety. Every hour, countless things happen that need the kind of guidance we must seek from philosophy. And the philosophy here is this, again, tranquility of mind, to use the Cretan language, that guides everything else. This steadiness, the captain of a ship or something along those lines. There's danger out there. There's icebergs out there. The good captain, the good philosophy can help the ship to avoid those icebergs. And it's probably not a very good captain who's going to freak out when he sees one. Oh my goodness, it's an iceberg! Ah! No, it has to be calmness. I saw someone wrote once or said once, all these things get smushed in my head. The sign of a truly great leader is someone who can keep their head when everyone about them is losing theirs. Calmness. Someone that you can follow because you know that they have their wits about them. You know that they're thinking clearly. Again, not that they're not experiencing emotions, but they're not overly emotional. They're not being led by their emotions. Philosophy will encourage us to obey God cheerfully. So Seneca happens to be a believer in a God. Fine, whatever. That's neither here nor there for the rest of the philosophy, I don't think. But fortune defiantly, she will teach us to follow God and to endure chance. But this is not the time to enter the debate about what is under our own control, or if providence is in command, or if a chain of fated circumstances drags us along irresistibly. Because that stuff doesn't change anything else. Right? What fortune controls and destiny and fate, whatever. It doesn't help with this thing up here. This thing is helped by reasonable expectations. Then you don't have frustration, you don't have anger, you don't have disappointment, you don't have anxiety. On top of this, you will have statues, paintings, and the ultimate adornments of luxury that any of the arts can devise. The only thing you will learn from all of this will be to want still more. Again, echoing Lucretius. Even if you have everything the Joneses have, you'll still want more. You'll still want more. You'll still want more. 770. Do you think I'm going to write to you about how well the winter has treated us? or what an inclement spring we're having, and other such silliness that people indulge in when they have nothing to say. How's the weather? How are the kids? How's this? How's life treating you? Notice that language. How is life treating you? Not how are you reacting to the realities of life. I'm also fascinated by the question, so, right, when you meet somebody, so what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? You know what I do for money? I do lots of things. I get up, I breathe, I eat, take care of my kids, my wife. No. What do you do? Oh, right. What's my job? What's my profession? What's my occupation? How do I fill the hours of the day? Gotcha. Okay. I propose instead, this is Seneca, I propose instead to write something that may be of some real use to both of us. And what might that be if not to exhort you to cultivate a good mental outlook? What could be greater than that? Because as long as you have this good mental outlook, it doesn't matter what brick wall is there. You're not trying to run through it. You're going over it. You're going around it. This recent circumstance is rather unfortunate, but I'll move on. Because this thing is calm and tranquil and steady. The way to be anxious and unsure of oneself. Cultivate a good mental outlook. What, you may ask, is the basis for that? Do not take pleasure in empty things. I said this is the basis. In fact, it's the final culmination. We reach the summit when we know what to enjoy and do not allow our happiness to depend on what is outside our control. Again, it's about the internal, not the external. The way to be anxious and unsure of oneself is to be spurred on by some hope or other, even though it may be within reach, or not hard to seek, and even if such hopes have played us false. This above all, my dear Lucilius, you must aim for. Learn the secret of true enjoyment. Being present here and now, so on and so forth. Again, echoing many of the same things Lucretius talked about. Lost my balance. You may think I'm now depriving you of many pleasures by taking away all those that depend on luck, or by advising you to avoid hope, that sweetest of delights. Hope is the sweetest of delights. Again, we're talking about reasonable expectations. This isn't anti-hope. This isn't hopelessness. Well, it is less hope. Right? It's not full of hope. It's not hopeful, not full of hope. But it's also not devoid of hope. It's a reasonable amount of hope. Hope. That would be nice if. It doesn't happen. Oh well, I move on. It did happen. How nice. I want joy to be something you are never without. And so again, joy is this internal thing. As long as that's steady, it's not changing, you can't be without it. You are joyful, you are full of joy. Not necessarily happiness in the fleeting sense, not necessarily pleasing or displeasing. There may be external circumstance stuff, but joy. I want to be born in your house, and this can happen only if it is within you. All other pleasures do not fill our inner being. They merely change the expression on our faces and have no lasting significance. All that external stuff that's going to change. The mind itself must be happy and confident, and raised high above every external circumstance. True joy, believe me, is a serious matter. 770. Joy is a serious matter. Right? There's an entire course from Yale, I believe it is, that you can now take for free online as part of the, pandemic mental health thing, all about happiness, and not in the fleeting way. Joy, to use Seneca's words. Internal contentment, tranquility. Class podcast may be worth checking out. I don't know, I might do it this summer, we'll see. Apparently it's a work at your own pace thing. One of my friends is going through it. This is far from a cheery kind of joy. This isn't, oh, yay! No. Because there again, that ties it too much to the emotions. No, this is... Once you have it, once you have this internal joy, it will never leave you. Because no matter what else happens, that's just external circumstances. It's not going to affect this up here. If this is tranquil, it's tranquil. The pleasures most people pursue give enjoyment that is shallow and superficial. And such thinly coated joy has no secure basis. Wine, women, and song, for instance. Fleeting pleasures. Pleasures of the flesh. Bodily stuff. External stuff. Not real joy there, says Seneca. Because there again, that stuff can be taken away from you just as quickly and easily as it was given to you, or that you found it, or whatever. If you're not putting much work into it, then you're not going to get much out of it. Here, this tranquility of mind thing, happiness is a serious matter, requires serious work to get here. And so once you have that, just think about if I were to offer to you, this is an example, let me be clear, this is an example, I'm not actually offering this. If I were to offer to you, hey, I'll just give you an A for the course. You don't have to do any work, you don't have to show up, nothing, I'll just give it to you. Some of you will take me up on that offer. Others of you would be like, that seems kind of cheap. It seems kind of superficial. I'd rather put in the work, not being assured that I'll earn an A, but then if I do earn an A, it'll be so much more meaningful because I will have earned it. I will have put the work and the effort into it. It'll be a culmination of that work and the effort. Some of you may be so crazy that you would rather earn a B than be given an A. Some of you would rather have to earn your money in some way rather than just have it given to you. That gifts are awkward, because then you feel obligated to then return that gift somehow. Wait, I don't deserve this. I didn't earn this. Interesting. There's this calmness, and that's really what Stoicism is the calmness of passions, the calmness of emotions, not lack of emotions. Just bring it into proper context, rather than this. So Seneca elsewhere talks about you could be sick, dying, in peril, in exile, in disgrace, and yet still be happy. In this sense here. Interesting. That brings us then to Augustine. And Augustine happens to be a Christian. Okay, is that in this excerpt? Yes, but I think the important part of this excerpt is not the God stuff. Is God necessary for a happy, meaningful life? Whatever, I don't know. That's a different question. What he really focuses on here, meaning through service to others. That's where the truly fulfilled life is to be found. The true meaning is in giving yourself in service to others. Which again, could be in a religious context or not. Whatever. I'm going to give you an example from Schrappe's life. This is a short excerpt. I'll give you an example from Schrappe's life. A couple of years ago now, my sister-in-law, the company that she worked for at the time, had met some goal that they set or something. And so every employee of the company, it's a small company, every employee of the company plus one got to go to a resort in Mexico for, I believe it was 4 days, a long weekend. And My sister-in-law's husband is in the military, and so he was unavailable. So she took my wife, also known as her sister. Okay? Now, I have my own 3 children. This would have been February. I have my own 3 children. I mean, I have 3 children, not just in February, but I'm recalling other events here. So I have my own 3 children. Then for that particular weekend, then I also had her 2 children. One of whom was, I think, 1 year old at the time. Just a baby, right? An infant. And so, rather than burden me with infant care nonstop, thinking about Hamilton again, this child's usual babysitter was going to handle the night shift. I was going to be on for the day. Now, the same weekend, I guess I'll call them a friend. I guess, again, we haven't really defined friends. Someone whom I know had to quickly move out of their apartment and had no one to help them except me. So the same weekend that my wife and sister-in-law are gone, I'm responsible for 5 children. It's the same weekend that this person needs to move. Happened to be snowing. That's how I remember it was February. It was snowing, and so I have access to a full-size van. Now, everyone else is busy. This is Friday in February. Everyone else is busy. And so, after work, after I teach my classes, I go to this full-size van. This is in the snow, and I unload all of the seats by myself. I load up some of this person's stuff, which was at another location. Load all that stuff up. Then, first thing Saturday morning, I go to this person's place and load up the rest of their stuff. And I unload all of their stuff, again, all by myself. And when I go to leave their establishment, after unloading everything, a few hours later, putting together beds and all of that, right, serving them, this full-size van refuses to start. Now, keep in mind, this entire time, I'm now separated from my own children. This is now the weekend. This is during the school year, so I don't get much time with them during the week. Saturdays and Sundays are the time that I get most with my children. I get the evening as well, but you know what I mean, right? So here I am serving others. And so I mean, it's Saturday evening now before I get back home, after having served other people. Sunday then, I receive a message from my sister-in-law who says that her youngest, the 1-year-old, was sick and needed to be taken to urgent care. Because the babysitter, remember, she gets the night shift, said he didn't sleep well and he was coughing or whatever, I don't know, anyway, he was sick. Okay? Now, remember, she's in another country. Her husband, I forget where he was at the time, also not available. I'm the responsible adult for this child, and I'm being told to take it to urgent care. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever been to an urgent care on the weekend. These places are insane, right? And so I'm trying to avoid going. I don't want to go if I don't have to, right? Plus, I'd like to spend some time with my kids. So I monitor the child some Sunday morning. He seems fine to me. And I tell my sister-in-law as much. I said, I think he's fine. Just because you have a rough night doesn't mean you're sick. I think he's fine. She said, please, I implore you, I'm begging you, take him to urgent care. Fine. She's a concerned mother whose country's away. Okay, fine. So I take him. And because it's urgent care on the weekend, I'm there for like 3 hours before the doctor can see us. And so the doctor calls us in, says, you know, what's going on. I explain what happened the evening before. I explain what I've seen. And the doctor says to me, okay, so this is your nephew. Is this your sister-in-law's first child? I say no. It's her second. What do you think is wrong with him? The doctor asks me. Now, I'm a doctor, but not that type of doctor, and this doctor doesn't even know I'm this type of doctor, right? What do you think's wrong with him? Just as a parent, what do you think's wrong with him? I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with this child. I think I've wasted the past 3 hours of his life and mine by being here. The doctor said, I completely agree with your diagnosis. There is nothing wrong with this child. So now all of Saturday was taken up serving others. Okay, well, much of Friday evening was too. Much of Friday evening, most of Saturday, and now most of Sunday have been taking up serving others. And who suffers? Me and my own children. And Augustine is saying, service to others is where it's at. Is it? Let's see what Augustine says. He starts by invoking God, so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. But the second paragraph's where it gets good. Thus we have this seed within us, in accordance with our own likeness. For it is from our own weakness that we feel the compassion to support the needy, helping others even as we would wish to be helped if we had the same needs. We have this seed within us, so we want to help others. We necessarily feel compassionate towards others. We have this natural inclination to serve others, says Augustine. But why? It's from our own weakness. That's interesting. Because we would wish to be helped if we were in that situation. So we suffer with compassion, we suffer with others, because we would want someone to suffer with us if we were suffering. Is that service to others or service to self? Is that selfish? I'm helping you because I would want someone to help me if I needed it. My wife asked my older children a very interesting question a few months ago. And she asked them, remember she's a mental health counselor, she said, and it was primarily directed at my oldest, my 14-year-old daughter. She had tried to help someone, things hadn't worked out great. She was somewhat disheartened. Perhaps her expectations were too high, to go back to Seneca. And so my wife asked, when should you help someone? My daughter said, when they need it. Dr. Schrappe thought that's the right answer, right? My wife says, incorrect. The time to help someone's not when they need it? When's the time to help them? My daughter, my oldest, thinks very much like I do. She was very confused by this. Okay, Mommy, when am I supposed to help them then? My wife, the mental health counselor, says, when they ask for it. And this is somewhat like the first step of recovery of any type, right? The first step is recognizing you have a problem. Recognizing that you need help. So that the help actually then is effective. Right? My wife in her practice sees people who occasionally the court recommends that they see someone. Those sessions don't go as smoothly as well. Because the client, the patient, doesn't recognize that they need this help yet. They're being forced to be there. Helping people when they ask for it rather than when they need it. Keeping the control and the power with that person rather than taking it away from them. You need help, I see that, let me help. I don't know, that's a debatable issue and topic as well. Maybe that'd be another good question for the discussion board. When should you help someone? And is helping someone selfish or selfless? Especially if I'm concerned about my happiness, fulfillment, purpose, meaning, and I find that through service to you. To what extent then is my service about you, and to what extent is it about me? Interesting questions. And is it actually natural for us to want to help others? Or is it more natural to want to only help self? Helping to rescue those who suffer injustice from the hands of the oppressor. Giving the shelter of our protection through the strong arm of just judgment. praise. When these fruits spring from the earth, you behold and see it as good. And for the limited span of our time, let our own light break forth. This little light of mine, we'll let it shine, and so forth. From this lowly fruitfulness of action, let us reach the higher joys of contemplation and hold fast to the world of life. Let us appear like lights in the world. So we're getting this light-dark motif, which comes from religion. It also comes from Plato, which we'll see in a couple of weeks. Light, good, dark, bad, so on and so forth. This light shining in the world, this little light of mine, kumbaya, and all of that. And he says something interesting on 773. Now remember, we have this seed within us to want to help others and feel compassionate towards them. On 773, he says we have to learn to do good. Whoa, 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 hold on. Is it natural, or do we have to learn it? You don't have to learn natural things, typically. It's natural to know how to breathe. You don't have to be taught it. It's natural to know how to walk. You have to practice it. That's different than learning it. Learning seems to be coming from the outside. If it's coming from the outside, then it's not a seed from within. Learn to do good. Put aside bitterness, malice, wickedness. If I'm naturally drawn toward the good, why do I have to learn it? And, secondly, where's this bitterness, malice, and wickedness coming from? I have to put it aside. If it's from outside, it should be easy. Just put it to the side. If it's from inside, that's way tougher. It's way tougher to change who you are. But if who we are on the inside is bitter, malice, malicious, and wicked, then where's this seed of helping others coming from? Very confused here. I also wonder then, Augustine keeps wanting to tie us back to God, 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 God. Do you need to have God in order to want to help people? And even then, when you bring God in, that further complicates it rather than clarifies. Holding in abeyance the questions of does God exist and so on and so forth, that's, again, weeks from now. We'll discuss those things. If I'm serving others only because God wants me to, is that also then selfish again? I'm doing it because God wants me. I'm doing it because God wants me. Or is it really about the other person? And if we want to get really Buddhist here, and also foreshadow someone else we'll talk about in this class as well down the road, where does self and other stop and start anyway? The great compassion, the great suffering within Buddhism, also known as the Great Awakening, is this realization that there's really not a difference between you and me. We're really all the same thing. I'm influencing you, you're influencing me, and so me, you gets very blurry and messy. So there again is compassion about the other person or about me. All right, so that's good for this one. So for next time, then, discuss on the discussion board the things that I post, which will be about Lucretius, Seneca, and Augustine. And then go ahead and be working on your journal entry also, which I gave you the topic last time. And for Thursday, then, go ahead and read Montaigne and Schopenhauer, and they should be, I believe, the next two excerpts. Well, Montaigne is the next one, page 774. And then we're skipping Pascal. We'll come back to him later in the term and move on to Schopenhauer. Allow me to warn you about Schopenhauer. He is depressing. Very depressing. He could be the closest we get to an actual nihilist in this class. Don't read it if you're already depressed. It'll make it worse. And you may need to take a break from it too, even though it's only a few pages. It's heavy, it's deep, and it's dark and depressing. Just so you know. See you next time.